So, to get started, I want to start with a question. Why do readers buy and read fiction? You're welcome to put an answer in the chat if you want, but if not, just think about it in your head. Come up with an answer. Why do you think that readers buy and read fiction? Most people, when I ask this question, come up with answers that fall under what I call the 4 E's: escapism, entertainment, enlightenment, or education. Chances are whatever question you or whatever answer, you came up with in your head probably falls under one of these 4 umbrellas or something pretty adjacent to it. And those answers are all true. I'm sure most of you came up with the correct answer. But they're also surface answers, and they don't really give us the deeper why. Today, we're going to go deeper than that because when we understand something more deeply, that's when we can finally change our own results. So if you want to learn how to write really spectacular fiction that readers cannot get enough of, you have to understand why they read fiction to begin with so that you can give them what they're looking for. If you can't do that, your fiction is never going to sell, at least not well. You'll sell a few copies here and there maybe, but you're never going to be able to write really good fiction that readers just can't stop reading. And that's, of course, what we want. So we're going to go a level deeper. Think about it this way. Why do readers read books to get those things? Everything that we just talked about, the answer you came up with in your head, escapism, entertainment, enlightenment, all of that. Why do they read books for that instead of going to an amusement park for entertainment, or playing miniature golf for escapism, or taking a long walk on a beautiful day? You know, if you're in nature and you're thinking about philosophical stuff, you can have enlightenment. Those are all good ways to get those things. So why are they reading books to get those things? Novels, specifically. The question is not just what they're after. The question is, what is it about reading fiction that specifically delivers it for them? I want you to think about the last book you read that genuinely moved you, the one you still think about, the one where you cried or felt your heart pounding, or maybe when you closed the back cover, you just had to sit with it for a little while, right? Something that really moved you and lives rent-free in your brain for a time. What was that really? What were you actually experiencing there? Why did you love that book? Why did it live in your brain? Why did you keep thinking about it? Here's truth number 1 that you need to take away from today. You have to really integrate this if you want to be good at fiction. Readers read fiction in order to feel big emotions in a safe space. I'm going to repeat that because it bears repeating. Readers read fiction in order to feel big emotions in a safe space. That is what they're after. They want to feel the emotion of the story and of the characters. That's it. They can't get the emotion from miniature golf. Only a story can deliver the emotion that they're looking for. But not all stories deliver it. Stories that are not well written don't deliver that emotional experience. And that's why the reader says, meh, it was okay. This one insight should change everything about the way that you write fiction. Here's the thing about big emotions. Our world does not hold space for big emotions, does it? We're constantly told things like, calm down, be a professional, don't make a scene, don't be so sensitive, right? This is what we're told in our society. And what it does is it makes it so that we are constantly repressing our emotions and we're not feeling them fully. And the result of that is that we are not living the most healthy emotional life that we should be. And this is true of most human beings, okay? This is part of our society, and it's also part of the human condition, okay? And what that does is it creates a yearning in us to feel those emotions, to process them, and to release them. So we're told to repress our emotions, be polite, keep it together. But as human beings, we are meant to feel emotions deeply. That is how we're built. And when we don't experience, process, and release those emotions, we have problems. So experience the emotion, meaning feel it in a really big way. Process it really means to derive meaning from it, to sit and think about it and understand why we're feeling that and just process it, integrate it. And then we also need to release those emotions. And the vast majority of human beings do not have a process for doing this and don't do it most of the time. And when they don't, we start to have problems. We don't heal. And this is both emotionally and physically, because science is now telling us that emotions can get stuck in our bodies and cause illness. Okay. So, of course, there's the emotional healing, but there's also the physical healing. We're also not growing. We tend to start feeling stuck. And that is part of the problem that a lot of human beings have in their lives. But fiction has this unique ability to help us do these things. And we're doing them kind of by proxy because it's living through, vicariously through the stories and the eyes of the characters we're reading about. But this is why people love fiction, because it gives them the, what's the word I'm looking for? It gives them the permission to feel the emotions through the story that they don't even realize they want to feel in real life that are being repressed. Okay, that's why we have something called a catharsis. The catharsis happens at the high point of the story, right around the same area as the climactic moment, and it is a release of emotions. And it just feels so good to hit that climactic point and release those emotions, okay? It really is therapeutic to experience a highly emotional story that gives us this process. So what does this mean for you? Your readers come to your story specifically because they want to feel something big, something the real world is not giving them space for. That can be grief, it can be love, it can be fear. Very often it's triumph, transcending circumstances, it's heartbreak, it's all of the big emotions that we are often too embarrassed to give voice to in real life. But they're very much a part of being human. And so your reader comes wanting to feel these big emotions, but of course they don't want to feel or to have to worry about the actual physical stakes. They don't actually want to be in the sword fight because most of us don't have skills in a sword fight and would just die, right? But they can experience it through the story from the safety of their couch or, whatever their favorite reading spot is. So in terms of you as the author, this is very simple, but it is everything. Your job, your entire job, is to make sure your readers feel something through your story. Your story must give your readers an emotional experience. Now, very often, I want to be clear about this, I will say very often that we need to write more emotional stories. And this is what I mean when I say that. So do not confuse this with saying, don't think that I mean you need to make your characters feel more emotion. I mean, you certainly can do that if the story calls for it, but I don't mean, when I say you need to write an emotional story, I don't mean your character needs to cry more, right? I'm talking about the reader. You need to facilitate a deeply, deeply emotional experience for your reader as they go through your story. If your reader finishes your book and says, it was okay, that is actually the kiss of death, okay? I know it doesn't seem like it's quite as bad as getting a negative review, like the story totally sucked and I hate it, but at least if they're saying they hated it, they're feeling some passion about it. And of course, that's not what we want either. I'm not saying you should go for that, but it was okay means the story was mediocre. It means it didn't give them emotions one way or the other. Not negative emotions, not positive emotions. They didn't hate it, they didn't love it. It's just bland. And that, to me, is actually worse than a bad review. Because okay doesn't create mega fans. Okay doesn't get your book into somebody else's hands. There will be no word of mouth if your reader did not love your book. And here's the thing, if your reader is feeling emotion, they are not bored, ever. If they are not feeling emotion, they will be bored every single time. So here's the next big takeaway from you. We very often in our space talk about what hooks a reader. You need to hook your reader. The first page, the first chapter, you only have a few paragraphs. Hook your reader. What hooks the reader? It's probably not what you think it is. If you think your readers are hooked by your plot, I got news for you. It's not the action, it's not the romance, and it's not the plot twists. Sure, readers will pick up a book because of the genre or the premise, a beautiful cover. Of course, that's the first thing they see. But the reason they stay up till 2 a.m. turning pages The reason they put your book in their friends' hands and say, you have to read this. The reason they become mega fans who buy everything you write, that's emotion. It's the internal. That's what it always comes back to every single time. So the next time someone asks you this, or you think about it, how do I hook my reader? Emotion. It is always the emotion that hooks the reader. Okay, it is not the action. It is not the plot twist. It's not even the romance or the sex. Now, I will say that all three of those things are great, and where appropriate, absolutely put them into your stories. And the romance and the sex is the easiest gateway to emotion. So that's why that genre will always be the highest selling. But that should tell you something too. The highest selling genre is the one that creates the most emotion the most easily. And it's the most human emotion that everybody wants to feel, right? The romance and the sexual attraction. So it's always the emotion that hooks the reader, okay? Believe it or not, it's actually not the romance or the sex or the action. It's what those things make the reader feel. It is the emotion that is evoked by those things, okay? And yes, they very much do go hand in hand. You know, we may be splitting hairs a little bit here, but it's important that you understand this. It's always the emotion that's going to hook the reader. So if you do not want your story to be bland, if you do not want your characters to be flat, if you want to write a page turner that readers are just salivating over and can't stop, you have to dial in the emotion. If you don't do that, you will always have a book that falls flat. Always, okay? This is what you need to understand. This is the key that will unlock your fiction. This is what every single thing you do, every part of the story that you are putting together should be serving the emotion to create that emotional experience for the reader. And if you can always focus your efforts in this direction, you will always write better fiction because you will be serving your readers by giving them that emotional experience. But this is not trampling on your creativity. This is taking what you already have, the genius story that you have already created, and just making it the best version of itself by pulling out the deep emotions and allowing the reader to feel them. Okay?